Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Friday, January 2nd, 2026. The FBI says it has thwarted a potential New Year's Eve terror attack in North Carolina, and the suspect was directly inspired to act by ISIS. President Donald Trump and top officials in Iran threaten each other as deadly street protests continue in Iranian cities. As Somalia's ambassador to the United Nations takes over the rotating United Nations Security Council presidency, a reporter asks him about President Trump's criticisms of Somali-Americans linked to alleged public program fraud in Minnesota. New York City's new mayor, Zohran Mamdani, creates an Office of Mass Engagement and is asked about Israel calling him antisemitic for his revoking his predecessors' executive orders that barred city agencies from boycotting or divesting from Israel and adopting the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of antisemitism. The head of the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, Gene Todaro, has retired after a long career at the agency and in government. We'll talk with government executive reporter Sean Michael Newhouse about Gene Todaro's accomplishments and efforts to be bipartisan and how Congress will choose his replacement. The full video of former special counsel Jack Smith's deposition before the House Judiciary Committee was made public New Year's Eve. We'll talk with political reporter Haley Fuchs about what we learned from him about the Donald Trump election interference and classified documents cases that were ultimately dropped. Spectrum News reports an 18-year-old allegedly planned a terror attack for New Year's Eve in a town near Charlotte, North Carolina, the FBI said Friday. Federal agents arrested Christian Sturtevant on December 31st. The FBI said he planned to attack a Burger King and a grocery store in Mint Hill, a bedroom community just outside Charlotte. Sturtevant planned a massacre, said the FBI's James Barnacle, the special agent in charge for the FBI in Charlotte. Sturtevant, who turned 18 in December, has been charged with attempted material support of a foreign terrorist organization. He could face up to 20 years in federal prison if convicted. That was the article at Spectrum News. Also at today's news conference in Charlotte, North Carolina, U.S. Attorney Russ Ferguson.
The defendant here is an 18-year-old named Christian Sturtevant. He has been planning this attack for about a year, but he's been planning an attack for far longer than that. He was planning this attack in support of ISIS, and we have charged him with attempting to provide material support to a foreign terrorist organization, that organization being, of course, ISIS. Now, this is still very much an active investigation. We had to act quickly here to protect the public. So we are light on details, but we'll tell you as much as we can. And Mr. Barnacle will probably tell you more than I will about those charges, but I thought I would give you an overview of what's in the federal complaint and the charges that we charged. So Mr. Sturtevant started on the internet. He started reading ISIS material, started going to ISIS websites, making TikTok videos, and eventually reached out to what he thought was a member of ISIS. In reality, was an undercover agent with NYPD in New York. He pledged his allegiance to ISIS with that undercover agent, and he disclosed his plans to, quote, do jihad soon. He then met a second undercover with the FBI, who he also thought was an ISIS participant, and he started to be very specific with his plans. He talked with that undercover agent, again, who he thought was ISIS. He talked about where he was planning to do this attack, which was at a grocery store and a fast food restaurant in Mint Hill, places that we go every day and don't think that we may be harmed. He talked about what means he would use to kill innocent people. He said he was going to wear a Kevlar vest and attack people with knives and hammers. And of course, he talked about when he was going to carry out this attack, which was New Year's Eve. A time when American life is on full display, right? We're all out there in crowds celebrating all that has happened this year, all that is to come, that we are so proud of. And that is when he planned his attack to attack that American way of life. The FBI executed a search warrant at his home, and they found the instrumentalities of the attack. They found hammers and knives hidden under his bed. They found notes where he planned his attack and detailed his attack and plans for how he was going to carry out this attack. It was a very well-planned, thoughtful attack that he had planned and that was fortunately foiled here. He was preparing for jihad, and innocent people were going to die. And we're very, very fortunate they did not.
Russ Ferguson, U.S. Attorney for the Western District of North Carolina, at a news conference today in Charlotte with the leaders of the local FBI field office and the Mint Hill, North Carolina police chief. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi in a news release saying this successful collaboration between federal and local law enforcement saved American lives from a horrific terrorist attack on New Year's Eve. The Department of Justice remains vigilant in our pursuit of evil ISIS sympathizers. Anyone plotting to commit such depraved attacks will face the full force of the law. From Associated Press, U.S. President Donald Trump and top Iranian officials exchanged dueling threats Friday as widening protests swept across parts of the Islamic Republic, further escalating tensions between the countries after America bombed Iranian nuclear sites in June. At least 7 people have been killed so far in violence surrounding the demonstrations, which were sparked in part by the collapse of Iran's currency, but have increasingly seen crowds chanting anti-government slogans. That was from Associated Press. President Donald Trump warning in a Truth Social post, if Iran shoots and violently kills peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to their rescue. We are locked and loaded and ready to go. Al-Larijani, Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, responding on X, Trump should know that intervention by the U.S. in the domestic problem corresponds to chaos in the entire region and the destruction of the U.S. interests. The people of the U.S. should know that Trump began the adventurism. They should take care of their own soldiers. C-SPAN spoke this morning about the protests in Iran with Matthew Koenig, Atlantic Council Strategy and Security Vice President.
Well, this is an issue I've thought a lot about over the decades. My first job in government was working on the Iran file in the intelligence community in 2004. I was back working on Iran at the Pentagon about a decade later, and I wrote a book on Iran in 2014. And the Iranian population is increasingly upset with the Iranian regime. This theocratic regime is mismanaging Iran's economy. The international sanctions are also further hurting the economy. And so you have these widespread protests over economic conditions. And these are not totally new. We've seen protests over the years. 2009, there was this big green movement, other protests. And the sad reality has been that the Iranian regime is willing to kill to stay in power. And the Iranian people haven't been willing to rise up in large enough numbers and die in large enough numbers to take power. So unfortunately, my prediction is that's how this is going to play out. We've already seen the regime start a crackdown, has killed some protesters, has put others in jail. And so I think we will see a violent crackdown and probably the end of this current round of protests. But this has been a long simmering issue and I think is not going to go away anytime soon.
On that front, the president himself posting on Truth Social today saying this: if Iran shoots and violently kills peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to their rescue. We are locked and loaded and ready to go. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The president, when the president says stuff like this in relation to what's going on, what does that tell you? What do you think of that response?
Well, this is unusually strong language from a U.S. president. We have seen presidents in the past criticize the regime, support the protesters, but they've used sanctions or other tools. This sounds like a threat to intervene militarily. And the president does have some credibility in this regard, having just struck Iran's nuclear facilities last year. And there has been discussion about possibly Israel or the United States conducting a strike on Iran as it reconstitutes its missile program. And so we'll have to see. But I guess I would not be surprised if President Trump does authorize the U.S. military or Israel to strike Iran's missile facilities that they're trying to rebuild in response to a violent crackdown against these protesters.
Do protests like these, even though maybe they're economic in nature, do they influence other things like what Iran does eventually with missile programs, what it does for how it treats other parts of the world? Is there an ability to influence or sway, or does it strictly stay when it comes to just the protests about economics?
Well, the regime is fearful for its own survival, and part of the reason it does violently crack down, it doesn't want to collapse. And this is the primary goal of many autocratic regimes. Regime survival is number one. But then number two, Iran has had this foreign policy of supporting an axis of resistance, a group of terrorist and proxy groups, and investing in higher-end asymmetric capabilities, ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons. And so it seems like even though they've been weakened over the past year, that this two-part strategy really hasn't changed of repression at home and pursuing these destabilizing asymmetric capabilities internationally. And we do see that Iran has been able to walk and chew gum and do both of these things at the same time. And so even as it is repressing its population, it is investing again in its missile program, and likely in the future will try to reconstitute its nuclear program as well.
Matthew Koenig, Atlantic Council Strategy and Security Vice President, on C-SPAN's Washington Journal program this morning. Congressman Thomas Massie, Republican of Kentucky, responding to President Trump's post by writing, 1, we have problems at home and shouldn't be wasting military resources on another country's internal affairs. 2, military strikes on Iran require congressional authorization. And 3, this threat isn't about freedom of speech in Iran. It's about the dollar, oil, and Israel. The new United Nations Security Council president for January 2026, Somalia's ambassador, Abukar Dair Osman, was asked today at a news conference at the UN in New York City about any plans to bring this matter before the Security Council.
In Iran, there is a lot going on at the moment. The people are on the street and they're killed. Does your presidency of the Security Council want to do something for the people of Iran?
On the issue of Iran, I think we're expecting probably, we don't have something in the agenda now, but if something comes up, we're waiting and we're looking forward to address that issue also in the Security Council.
I'm sorry, Ambassador, something come up that people being killed now. We were talking also yesterday. You are the president of the Security Council now. Okay, well, what does have to come up?
Well, there is a UN Department of Peace that deals with this thing. So we're not following the whatever in the media. We cannot say 100% are right. So we have to get at least reliable sources from the UN or from things. But I think this is something that we follow, and we are serious about anywhere in the world that is a problem of crisis or killing or things that takes place. The Security Council will consider and look into it. But we are president. But the president also have to deal with all 15 members of the Security Council.
Somalia's ambassador to the United Nations, Abukar Dair Osman, at a news conference, Somalia assuming the rotating presidency of the Security Council for this month. Security Council today also welcoming 5 new non-permanent members for 2-year terms as elected by the General Assembly: Bahrain, Colombia, Democratic Republic of Congo, Latvia, and Liberia. About Iran, Reuters writes, during the latest unrest, Iran's elected president, Mahmoud Pezeshkian, has struck a conciliatory tone, pledging dialogue with protest leaders over the cost of living crisis, even as rights groups said security forces had fired on demonstrators. Somalia's ambassador also asked today about an ongoing issue involving Somali-Americans. Independent newspaper reporting today that Donald Trump's administration has shared an AI-generated fake trailer of an animated film denigrating Somali immigrants following viral claims that Somali-run daycare centers in Minnesota are fraudulently taking millions of dollars in government funding. In the artificially generated Pixar-inspired clip posted by a right-wing podcaster and shared by an official Trump administration X account on New Year's Day, a group of Somali men traveled to Minnesota to defraud the state's daycare program and live the high life. That was an article from The Independent. Here's the question to the Somali ambassador at the UN.
I want to get your reaction to a onslaught of anti-Somali rhetoric that has been going on in the U.S., most specifically from the President of the United States, and some of the, the rhetoric and even violent threats against Somali-Americans in the U.S. Thank you.
If you look into the rhetoric that's going on the social media, is something way far beyond what the reality is. And if you have seen the report that came from the governor of Minnesota and many cities in Minnesota and Ohio and many parts in Maine, and that you have seen like Somali-Americans that are really successful. Some of them are mayors. There is a city in Maine that's a young Somali lady that was elected mayor, And in Minnesota, Ilhan Omar was elected, and we have many other elected officials. Not only that, Somalis are known as entrepreneurs. Wherever they go, they are business-oriented, and they have a lot of businesses and successful businesses. So, and to me, it's something like, it's just, again, a way to distract the things. So I don't see any problems on the Somali-Americans on this issue, yeah.
Somalia's ambassador to the United Nations, Abukar Dair Osman, at a United Nations news conference in New York City at the start of Somalia's presidency of the UN Security Council. The U.S. Small Business Administration Administrator Kelly Loeffler was on Fox News Channel today announcing the latest steps the Trump administration is taking concerning the alleged fraud in Minnesota and the public assistance programs.
We are suspending funding to the state of Minnesota. I wrote a letter to Governor Tim Walz and said last week that we would be withholding the state millions of dollars from the state because there are simply no guardrails on taxpayer dollars. But the bigger picture is here, as soon as we found out following Thanksgiving weekend that there was massive fraud in Minnesota, we immediately went to look at pandemic-era programs, which we know were rife with fraud. And so we went and investigated. It only took us a couple days to find about $3 million in frauds from the indicted individuals that were listed, about 80 individuals. So we dug further. We picked up about 13,000 loans that were flagged from fraud. And as you mentioned, about 7,000 individuals in Minnesota now know that they will not be able to ever get loans from the SBA or disaster recovery funds because they have defrauded the federal government and our taxpayers. We're holding them accountable, and we will be sending those files over to federal law enforcement because this isn't just action to stop them from getting SBA support, but also to make sure that there are consequences for them, that there are prosecutions, and there's accountability.
Kelly Loeffler, the administrator of SBA Small Business Administration, on Fox News Channel today. President Donald Trump mentioned the alleged fraud in Minnesota during his remarks at a New Year's Eve party at his Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach, Florida. He also spoke about the state of the U.S. economy as the second year of his administration is about to get underway.
You saw 4.3. They were predicting 1.9, 4.3. We've taken in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs. We gave the military, the entire military, $1,776. $1,776, that's not bad. They were extremely happy. But we're doing great as a country. We're back. We're strong. I didn't think it could happen this fast. It's happening a lot faster than anybody would have thought possible. We have a lot of leaders here, great leaders like Tom Emmer. I watch him on television. He was talking about Somalia today. Where's Tom? He was talking about the Somalian population, and not very nicely. He was not nice. But that's okay. It isn't mine. Where is Tom? Right here. He's great. What a great leader he is. We need you in Minnesota. We need you in Minnesota. He's actually in Washington. Big, powerful congressman. But you did a great job today, Tom. Thank you very much. We all appreciate it because we want to take back our country. Can you imagine? They stole $18 billion. That's just what we're learning about. That's peanuts. In California is worse. Illinois is worse. And sadly, New York is worse. A lot of other places. So we're going to get to the bottom of all of it. It was a giant scam. Other than that, we're going to have a great new year. Actually, I view that as a reason for a good year because we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to get that money back. It's all coming back.
President Donald Trump at the New Year's Eve party at his Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach, Florida, Wednesday night. USA Today writing today, 2 days into 2026, President Donald Trump and his motorcade made a surprise pit stop to find just the right marble for his White House ballroom. Trump, who is staying at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida for the holidays on January 2nd, stopped at Arc Store and Tile in Lake Worth, Florida, where Trump, quote, at his own expense, purchased marble and onyx for the ballroom, according to a White House official. That was from USA Today. The chair of the Democratic National Committee, Ken Martin, posting on X today, Trump's big, ugly bill starts kicking in this year. What does this mean for you? Tax breaks for billionaires, the ultra-wealthy, and huge corporations, middle-class jobs on the chopping block, even higher energy costs. Nursing homes, hospitals, and health care are on the brink. That's what the Republicans fought for. That post from DNC Chair Ken Martin. Attorney General Rob Bonta, a Democrat, posted a video on Thursday about the expiration at the end of 2025 of Enhanced Affordable Care Act premium subsidies.
Starting today, Affordable Care Act premiums are skyrocketing for millions of people across the country. On average, premiums will rise by more than $1,000 a month. $1,000. Faced with those rising costs, many Americans will have to completely leave the health insurance system, which will jeopardize their health and raise costs because delaying care can often turn minor problems into expensive emergencies. Across the country, Americans are screaming at their leaders to tackle the affordability crisis. But once again, Trump and congressional Republicans have made life more expensive for Americans. And let me be clear, congressional Republicans had chance after chance to make a deal and stop this from ever happening, but they buried their heads in the sand and went home. I urge them to take action now. People are hurting.
California Attorney General Rob Bonta, a Democrat, posting that video on Thursday. Wall Street, the first trading day of the new year. The Dow up 319, Nasdaq down 6, S&P up 12. AP writes that Tesla lost its crown as the world's best-selling electric vehicle maker on Friday as a customer revolt over Elon Musk's right-wing politics, expiring U.S. tax breaks for buyers, and stiff overseas competition pushed sales down for a second year in a row. Tesla said that it delivered 1.64 million vehicles in 2025, down 9% from a year earlier. Chinese rival BYD, which sold 2.26 million vehicles last year, is now the biggest EV maker. That was from AP. WABC TV in New York writes that Friday is the second day in office for New York City's new mayor, and Zohran Mamdani is already looking to follow through on campaign promises. He announced an effort to get more people involved in city government, a move meant to mirror the grassroots energy of his successful campaign. The creation of the Office of Mass Engagement will be led by the head of his huge campaign volunteer network. Mayor Mamdani, a Democrat, made the announcement today in Brooklyn.
We are gathered at Grand Army Plaza, surrounded by powerful symbols of public life. The central branch of the Brooklyn Public Library, designed like an open book, a statement that knowledge should be shared and accessible to all. The Soldiers and Sailors Arch, a Civil War monument honoring those who fought in a war waged for a new birth of freedom and the expansion of democracy itself. Prospect Park, public space built not to be exclusive or ornamental, but to be shared. These are reminders of a belief that once guided this city, that public infrastructure should be generous, beautiful, and open. But a city is not held together by buildings alone. It is held together by trust and by whether people feel connected to the decisions that shape their life. That social infrastructure has been neglected for too long. Too often, engagement is fragmented or symbolic. Too often, people are asked for input, but never see how it shapes outcomes. Today, that changes. With the signing of this executive order, we will be establishing the Mayor's Office of Mass Engagement, a fundamental part of city government dedicated to rebuilding our social infrastructure at scale. This office, combining and reorienting the existing Community Affairs Unit, Public Engagement Unit, and other initiatives, starts from a simple premise. Working New Yorkers know what they need to thrive. Our job is to make sure government listens, consistently and with real consequence. The Office of Mass Engagement will organize participation across this city, proactively reach those that have been excluded, and ensure that public feedback is embedded directly into how we design policies, deliver services, and make decisions. And to lead this work, I am proud to announce that Tasha Van Auken will serve as commissioner.
New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, a Democrat, making the announcement today in Brooklyn, New York. He also took reporters' questions And one concerned, as the New York Times writes, the government of Israel accused Mayor Mamdani of New York of anti-Semitism on Friday, following his decision the day before to cancel 2 executive orders issued by his predecessor that had barred city agencies from boycotting Israel and defined some criticism of Israel as anti-Semitic. New York City, the article says, is home to the largest Jewish population outside of Israel, and the statement made on social media by the country's Ministry of Foreign Affairs was an extraordinary accusation of anti-Jewish animosity leveled at the new mayor of that city by the leadership of the Jewish state. That was from the New York Times. Here's the question to the mayor.
Would you address the criticism on the revoking the 2 executive orders on antisemitism? And yes, some call it intentional. How would you respond to that? And the second part is the IRA definition on antisemitism is actually an issue that a lot of major Jewish groups oppose, and they support something else. Is there any measure that you would consider that would define what antisemitism is?
So I was proud yesterday to sign a number of executive orders that will give my administration a clean slate to get to work on delivering a new era for New Yorkers, one where they can envision living an affordable and dignified life. And my administration will also be marked by a city government that will be relentless in its efforts to combat hate and division. And we will showcase that by fighting hate across this city, and that includes fighting the scourge of anti-Semitism, by actually funding hate crime prevention, by celebrating our neighbors, and by practicing a politics of universality. And when we speak about the IRA definition that you asked about, protecting Jewish New Yorkers is going to be a focus of my administration. And I also know that a number, as you said, of leading Jewish organizations have immense concerns around this definition. And so what we will do is actually deliver on our commitment to protect Jewish New Yorkers in a manner that is able to actually fulfill that.
New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, a Democrat, today, news conference in Brooklyn, New York. Mayor Mamdani had a large public swearing-in ceremony on Thursday, during which he said, "We will answer to all New Yorkers, not to any billionaire or oligarch who thinks they can buy our democracy. I was elected as a Democratic Socialist, and I will govern as a Democratic Socialist." After the ceremony, Bruce Blakeman, a Nassau County, New York County executive and Republican candidate for New York governor, went on WABC radio.
What I heard was a great orator. There's no question about that. He was pretty good. He knows how to read a speech. He knows how to read a speech. He's a flowery orator. We've seen that in the past from really bad people. What I got out of his speech today was veiled anti-Semitism, sugar-coated socialism, marshmallow Marxism, shared misery. You can go down the list. If you give him high marks for his delivery, I give him the lowest marks, an F- for content. Talked about collectivism. What does that mean? That's communism. Listen, if you're living in a nice home in Bayside, Queens, or a nice home in Midwood in Brooklyn, or out in Forest Hills in Queens, what he's talking about is basically, with collectivism, the fact that if you have a bigger home and a nicer home and you can afford luxuries, that needs to be shared with people who aren't as productive as you are, who don't contribute as much as you do, and haven't earned it. And it's very scary language from him. Yes, he delivered it in a flowery way. Yes, he spoke extremely well from a delivery standpoint. But the things that he was saying are just a shock to the American values that I grew up on, and I think we all grew up on. Basically, he's saying that we're not going to let landlords ever raise rent-stabilized apartments. Do you know what that means? That means that their apartments are going to fall into disrepair, that they're going to live in squalor, rather than have measured increases based on inflation, based on what you invest in an apartment house, and you're not going to get credit for that. So why would any landlord improve any apartment building if they weren't going to get compensated for that. And that's what this guy said.
Bruce Blakeman, Republican candidate for New York governor, on WABC Radio on Thursday. He is trying to face off against the current governor, Kathy Hochul, a Democrat who attended Mayor Mamdani's swearing in on Thursday, along with other Democrats. New York Attorney General Letitia James, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, Senator Bernie Sanders, he's an independent from Vermont, but he caucuses with the Democrats, and some former mayors, Bill de Blasio and Eric Adams. Eric Adams' term just ended. He did not run for re-election as a Democrat, tried briefly to run as an independent. He went on WABC Radio today to explain why he was there on Thursday.
I don't know who sang this song the first, but baby, it was cold outside. You know,
it was freezing. I felt so bad for you guys out there. It was like one of the coldest days ever, and you had to sit for a long time. What was your reaction to the inauguration, and how did it feel to be there, Mr. Mayor? You told us, I know you told me and John earlier in the week you were going to go. How did it feel to be there?
Good. You know, these moments are historical. I think about it as a child and growing up in the city, watching inaugurations of Mayor Koch, Mayor Jenkins, Mayor Giuliani, Mayor de Blasio. And, you know, you think about it, they seem like a moment in time, but they're part of the permanent history of our entire city, and if not the entire country. And so, you know, this was a proud moment for many Muslims. New York is who saw the first Muslim mayor being elected, and I think that those moments are important to people. I know how proud I was when David Jenkins was elected for the first time, and so what you want to do is, you know, if you love the city, you want to wish the city well, and I'm hoping that Mayor Zohran Mamdani could, you know, carry out some of the proposals he wants, because I want working class people to succeed in this city.
Former New York City Mayor Eric Adams on the Katz and Cosby Show on WABC Radio today. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Friday on C-SPAN Ceasefire. At a time when finding common ground matters most in Washington, former House Speaker, Republican California Congressman Kevin McCarthy, and former independent West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin come together to preview the year ahead in politics, including the upcoming midterm elections and the political and legislative battles ahead in Washington. They join host Dasha Burns.
Bridging the divide in American politics.
Watch C-SPAN Friday at 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, only on C-SPAN.
You can also listen to Ceasefire on demand anytime as a podcast wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you find your podcasts. Gene Dodaro, Comptroller General of the United States, has retired with the start of the new year. It ends a 15-year term as head of the GAO, Government Accountability Office, and a more than 50-year government career. In a couple of minutes, we'll talk about that career with a government executive reporter. First, here's Gene Dodaro questioned at his last hearing on December 16th by Senator John Fetterman, Democrat from Pennsylvania.
I think we can all hear, we would agree that the GAO is a very, very vital part of and a mission for our government overall, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And now it's really important. I think we believe that we can trust and know there's no political motivations based on the reports and the kinds of information that you relay, correct?
Absolutely. We pride ourselves on being nonpartisan, independent, objective, fact-based.
Yeah, and for me, regardless, yes, I'm a Democrat, but I don't care whether it's a Democratic administration or Republican. You know, it's absolutely important that we have an umpire that can make sure what comes from your department, you know, whether it's good or bad politically for whatever reason, that we have to trust that must be true. And any kinds of attempts that would degrade that or to influence that or to create effectively an arm of a political party, I think is dangerous, and it undermines, I think, that critical mission. You would agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why the Comptroller General has a 15-year appointment. It's one of the longest in the government, and it's there to help insulate against political influence and to ensure independence. And so it's critical. to be able to do that. Plus, GAO, the Comptroller General, cannot be removed by the President, only by impeachment by the Congress. That further ensures independence in our auditing of the executive branch agencies.
That's good. So what would you have any parting advice for the person that's next going to fill your job after you retire?
Absolutely. First thing, we need a person in there that can fulfill the nonpartisan role as much as humanly possible, to work with both sides of the aisle to gain the trust and respect of the Congress. We're in the auditing business, but we're also in the relationship business. I try to meet with majority and minority leaders of all the committees. We do work for 90% of the standing committees of the Congress. I try to, talk to them on a consistent basis. I meet with leaders of the executive branch agencies to build relationships. Just because we're independent and in the legislative branch doesn't mean we shouldn't have good constructive engagement with the executive branch agencies. We rely on them to implement our recommendations. Thirdly, I would tell a person coming in, trust the people in the GAO. We have well-developed best practices of our products. We issue over 600 reports a year in a very public arena, and those reports are all meet certain quality standards, and we have just great people, and I'm very pleased about that. So build relationships in the Congress, the agencies, be a good spokesperson, know how to manage a multidisciplinary workforce, and listen to your people.
Gene Dodaro, head of the Government Accountability Office, questioned by Senator John Fetterman, Democrat of Pennsylvania, at a Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs subcommittee hearing on December 16th. Gene Dodaro retired with the start of 2026. And also in mid-December, Sean Michael Newhouse, a staff reporter with Government Executive, spoke to Gene Dodaro about his career. Mr. Newhouse joins us now by phone. What did Gene Dodaro say about his tenure leading the GAO?
Absolutely. Well, first, let me thank you for having me. In response to your question, the first thing that comes to mind is I asked him what is the single action he did that he felt had the biggest impact on the American people. It's a question I often ask federal employees who are retiring. He ended up saying a lot of things, but one thing that came to mind is shortly after he became the head of the Government Accountability Office, in this case, the acting head, he was responsible for a lot of the oversight over the funding and the bank bailout of 2008, and then the trillions of dollars that were spent in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. GAO, his agency, they issued more than 200 reports about, is this money being spent effectively and efficiently, and ended up developing 484 recommendations. So the volume of his work at the time leading the agency, which was 17 years, and then his whole time at the agency was more than 50, is rather expansive.
What did he say about how things might have changed at the agency and in Washington since he started his career?
I didn't ask him that question specifically, but one thing that comes to mind is he did talk about artificial intelligence. He feels like GAO really started the ball rolling on the government's response to that issue when he started as an entry-level auditor in 1973. I'm assuming he was not thinking artificial intelligence was not something he had to become an expert in.
GAO investigates, but often Republicans and Democrats differ on what they want investigated. Did he talk about how he handles that situation?
Yeah, well, he emphasized throughout the interview the importance of relationship building as the head of GAO. I believe that was one of the things he recommended to the future head of the agency. And one thing he said specifically that stuck out to me is when he meets with the leadership of a committee, he always meets with the chair and the ranking member. Now, the chair will be a member of whichever party is in the majority. The ranking member will be the top member of the opposing party. He does that, one, to show that the agency is nonpartisan, but two, that's really important for relationship building so that when the parties inevitably switch, it's not like that new leader is going to assume that GAO or Dodaro, the head, is aligned with one party over the other.
We're talking with Sean Michael Newhouse from Government Executive. Maybe I should have started with this question, but what does the GAO do?
Yeah. Well, if you go to the GAO's website, they have hundreds, probably thousands of reports. They're auditors, in essence. They gauge whether federal agency programs, whether they're performing well as intended, and they make recommendations on how to improve them. They are a legislative branch agency, so they serve the American public, but they serve members of Congress so that they can be better informed when they're developing legislation.
And how will the next leader be chosen?
Yes, so Congress will create a bipartisan bicameral commission. Bicameral means both houses, so the House and the Senate. They will make recommendations to the president, who would then formally nominate someone. Now that individual will be subject to Senate confirmation. Looking at Mr. Dodaro, I believe he was acting for 2 years, so it might be some time before someone is confirmed in that position. In the meantime, GAO's chief operating officer will be the interim leader.
Going back to when I asked what Republicans and Democrats sometimes differ on what they want GAO to do, will there be any partisan problems in choosing one leader?
Certainly. Well, just talking about recent history, House Republicans for this most recent round of appropriations, they actually proposed having GAO's funding and also limiting GAO's ability to sue over impoundments. Now, I'm going to nerd out for a second. So impoundments is when, so Congress has the power of the purse. If the executive branch withholds or delays spending that money, that could be an impoundment. GAO is the agency that investigates those, determines if there have been any violations. There have been at least a handful under Trump where GAO has said that impoundment violations have occurred. So that has become an issue and will likely be an issue in the nominations process.
And returning to Gene Dodaro, the longtime GAO leader retiring. Last question, I believe, at your article at govexecutive.com is, what is he going to do now? What was his answer?
I asked, well, before I answer that, it was specifically GAO has found at least 5 impoundment violations since the start of Trump's second term. I asked Mr. Dodaro what he would be doing on his first day of his retirement, which his last day was December 29th, so that has happened. He said he wanted to hug all of his grandchildren, so his priority is his family and his retirement.
Sean Michael Newhouse, staff reporter with Government Executive. Find his articles at govexec.com and on X at Sean the Newsboy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Washington Post writes that Jack Smith, the former special counsel, defended his decision to twice indict President Trump, accusing him of exploiting violence on January 6, 2021 to overthrow the 2020 presidential election, according to a transcribed interview released by House Republicans Wednesday. Mr. Smith, a former prosecutor vilified by Mr. Trump as a partisan, spent much of the 8-hour closed-door session on December 17th before the House Judiciary Committee rebutting a range of Republican claims, including the accusation that he had improperly obtained metadata on phone calls involving Trump-allied lawmakers. That article from the Washington Post. In just a moment, we'll talk with a Politico reporter about what we learn from Jack Smith's deposition. First, here's a few minutes of the testimony.
The decision to bring charges against President Trump was mine. But the basis for those charges rests entirely with President Trump and his actions, as alleged in the indictments returned by grand juries in 2 different districts. Our investigation developed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that President Trump engaged in a criminal scheme to overturn the results of the 2020 election and to prevent the lawful transfer of power. Our investigation also developed powerful evidence that showed that President Trump willfully retained highly classified documents after he left office in January of 2021, storing them at his social club, including in a ballroom and a bathroom. He then repeatedly tried to obstruct justice to conceal his continued retention of those documents. I remain grateful for the counsel, judgment, and advice of my team as I executed my responsibilities. I am both saddened and angered that President Trump has sought revenge against career prosecutors, FBI agents, and support staff.
Joining us now with more on the New Year's Eve release of former special counsel Jack Smith's deposition before the House Judiciary Committee is Haley Fuchs, congressional reporter with Politico. Thank you for being with us. Before we get to the topics, how long is the video of this deposition?
So thanks so much for having me today. The deposition was quite long. I believe it stretched on longer than 8 hours, although there were some breaks in the middle there. But it was really an all-day affair for Jack Smith.
Did you watch the whole thing?
We read throughout the whole 255 pages of the transcript. So it certainly was long.
The headline at your article at Politico.com is 7 takeaways from Jack Smith's congressional testimony. So go through some of the headlines. You can fill in the blanks. First one, Smith built his case around Trump's allies. What was in there?
So I think what was really interesting with that was just it was apparent that there were several Republicans who wanted Trump to win the 2020 election, but who, during Smith's investigation, acknowledged that the election was lost and that Trump had tried to subvert the result of the election.
The second one, Smith hadn't made his final charging decisions.
So with that, I think that Smith had said that he had not decided yet kind of how some of Trump's potential co-conspirators would have been charged. All this became a moot point because the case was dismissed after Trump's election.
Third one, lawmakers failed to knock Smith off his game. I'm assuming that refers to the Republicans.
Yeah, so I think it was notable that going into this, there was some concern from people that potentially Republicans were trying to set Jack Smith up to be prosecuted for some reason. Trump has repeatedly said that he's a criminal and called for his prosecution. And it was notable that during this kind of 8-hour-long testimony, it really didn't seem that Smith kind of fell into any of the holes that Republicans were trying to set up there.
Number 4, Smith forcefully rejected any hint of political bias. I guess that has been another charge from the Republicans.
Right. Republicans have really repeatedly said that Smith is kind of the pinnacle of weaponization of the Biden-era Justice Department. And Smith repeatedly said that politics played no role in his probe and that he would have done the same had it been a Republican or a Democratic president.
The next one, Smith didn't pursue uncooperative witnesses. And then Smith defends pursuit of lawmakers' phone records. That became a very large issue after.
Right. So a big issue with Jack Smith's investigation over the last few months has been these revelations that his office requested the phone records for congressional Republicans. It's worth noting that his office did not request the content of these calls, but it did request data on who and when were called. And Republicans have claimed that this is, the key example of the weaponization of the DOJ under Biden. Smith has maintained that these subpoenas were just the due course of his investigation, and we'll likely see that these telephone subpoenas for congressional Republicans continue to be an issue as both the House and the Senate continues to investigate Smith's probe.
Was there anything in the deposition that you found had not been previously reported? I guess that is that members of Congress who were in the room highlighted to the media after that was surprising.
I think, to me, the most surprising part was that this was dropped on New Year's Eve, because Republicans really had been hyping this up for so long, so excited to sit down with Jack Smith and question somebody who they have kind of portrayed as a villain in Trump's story. And yet it kind of was dropped on a day where Washington was largely not paying attention to the news. And I think that is kind of emblematic of the fact that it didn't necessarily help Republicans' case. And I think I'm curious to see whether Republicans in Congress continue to go after Smith and continue to investigate his probe, given that it seems that this wasn't for them kind of the slam dunk that potentially they were anticipating.
We're talking with Haley Fuchs, congressional reporter with Politico. President Trump has made no secret that he would like to see his political enemies pursued by the Justice Department. I guess Jack Smith is among them. Was he questioned about that possibility?
At one point, he was questioned on, what do you make of the fact that the Trump admin has issued an executive order targeting your law firm? And he said, I think that's to chill people's associations with me. So it does seem that Jack Smith is aware of kind of the potential legal liabilities around him right now under the Trump administration.
And we'll return to your 7 takeaways. The last one, the House GOP revel in Smith's comments on Cassidy Hutchinson. I guess this was highlighted shortly after the deposition.
Mm-hmm. And Cassidy Hutchinson was obviously a star witness for the Democratic-led January 6th committee a few years ago in the wake of the January 6th Capitol attack. And what Jack Smith said is that what Cassidy Hutchinson told his team appeared to be largely second or third hand. And so it didn't seem that they were going to rely on her testimony in prosecuting this case if it had been taken to trial. Republicans really were energized by that comment, and they really went online after the transcript was released and said, what this shows is that Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony is invalid or lacking in credibility.
But at the same time, Jack Smith made it clear, I believe, in the testimony, they had enough evidence to convict.
He was very clear that he believed that Trump would have been convicted and that Trump's behavior was criminal.
Haley Fuchs, congressional reporter with Politico, and again, the article, Politico.com, 7 takeaways from Jack Smith's congressional testimony. And you can follow her on X at Haley_Fuchs. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
NBC4 in Washington reporting the Virginia man accused of planting pipe bombs outside DNC and RNC headquarters on the eve of the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol will remain behind bars. A federal magistrate judge ruled Friday that Brian Cole Jr. must remain detained pending trial, describing him as a potential danger. A new episode of C-SPAN's Ceasefire airs tonight at 7 and 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Republican from California, and former Senator Joe Manchin, first a Democrat turned independent from West Virginia, preview the year ahead in politics with host Dasha Burns. Here's a bit of the program on their assessment of the Republican and Democratic parties as the new year begins.
American people are saying, who do we like least? We don't like either one, but who do we like least? That's what they've said. And Republicans are better. They like them. They like the Democrats least. They do the Republicans. They're not pleased with either one. We're going to have to get back to governing, and the president's going to have to get back. Calm it down, Mr. President, a little bit. We need a leadership. We need people. We need you as a voice that wants to unite, and he's not giving us that voice. So we like, and I like a lot of the things that he's done. I like securing the border. I thought the Democrats were crazy on asylum at the border. And I think that's given the president a lot of cover. Let me give you one other barometer too, and I don't know if Kevin will agree with me or not, but the Tennessee race, you had a special election down in Tennessee, yeah. Kevin, and the Democrats were saying, oh, we only lost by 9 points. If they would have had a centrist, moderate Democrat, such as Abigail Spanberger or Mikey Sherrill, they could have won that race there. That was a winnable race for Democrats, but they can't get out of their own way. They went with a real far progressive person on the left. And you know, that's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And Kevin's right. Democrats have lost more registration, people who are registered as Democrats, since the November election of 24 than the Republicans, and they have gained. So if you think this country is going left, and if the Democrat progressives think that they're going to win from the far left, I mean the far left, they're just throwing, and Texas is a perfect example right now. They're just kind of throwing that one up. You know, what they have running against. The
quality of the candidate matters. Let me give you an example. When Nancy Pelosi was elected Speaker, I was elected Republican leader. In those 4 years, we turned it around and won the majority by 5 seats. We were able to win 5 more seats in California without redrawing the lines. We won 5 more in New York.
Right.
We elected the most Republican women, the most Republican minorities. We ran in seats we hadn't won before, along the border of Texas, where they didn't think Republicans could. So if you get a better candidate, better message, you can win. So who's going to be the nominees for the Democrats? Are they going to go the Mamdani route? Are these going to be socialist Democrats? I mean, Joe was right about Tennessee. It's competitive. What you really want to look at, if you really want to follow it, don't look at the governor races. If you look at the 2 governor races they won, they didn't run far left Democrats. They won 2 moderate congresswomen. One went to the Naval Academy and one was a CIA. Mm-hmm. Somebody you don't really see in the Democrats. But if you look at those state races, the Democrats beat every Republican that sat in seats as incumbents. That Kamala Harris won that district, and they won the races that Trump won up to 4.5%. So if you extrapolate that on the current districts, you would say Democrats have a better chance of winning the majority, but only to about 220, maybe 223. So it's total jump ball. Republicans are in the majority. I would do as a wake-up call. No longer give people breaks from not being in Congress. Don't sit there and put a bill by the day, put a strategy, right? And start with the election day and work backwards.
Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Republican of California, and former Senator Joe Manchin, first a Democrat, then an independent, on C-SPAN's Ceasefire program, airing tonight at 7 and 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. Also available as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Remember, C-SPAN is now on YouTube TV. Current and new subscribers can get C-SPAN, C-SPAN 2, and C-SPAN 3. Find out more at tv.youtube.com. And for the latest on the headlines in Washington, sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter word for word at cspan.org. Have a good night and weekend.